is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Saga, issues 1 through 3, brought to you by Maccewill. In this episode, I'm going to be trying something a little different, and if you're listening, I apologize now, because this will work much, much better if you're in the crowdcast with me. Welcome to Spoil Me. All right, everybody. So those of you who are curious, what I'm doing today is I am going to be screen sharing while I podcast, so that you guys can see the comic frames. And I'm hoping that this works properly. So this is chapter 1. Is this working right? Yes, it looks like it is. This is so cool, guys. I'm really delighted because Maccewill asked if I could do this. I was like, I think I can, but I wasn't totally sure if it would work. And what Maccewill purchased as the commission was a voyeur episode. But Maccewill didn't want me to actually read it for the first time while I was on camera with you, the way that voyeur normally works. He wanted me to be able to show you guys all the work. So that is what I'm doing. And I just think that this is so rad to be, and I can understand after reading the first 3 issues why Maccewill wanted me to do it this way, because the artwork for this is just gorgeous. Like, I have not read too many comics. That's not something that I'm that into. And the only other book that I've read that really impressed me was Rat Queens. I don't know if any of you have read that, but Rat Queens has some really gorgeous artwork as well. And I'm not, familiar with artist names or anything. I haven't really looked into this. And if I continue Saga, then I probably will start to become more aware of that and check into that a little bit more. But if you have not, I will obviously be using a panel from Saga as the artwork for this episode, which I don't tend to do. I normally use the same banner cover as I use for the events on every episode posting. But this is just too beautiful to not use. So I'm going to be doing this. So chapter 1. Let's see how I control this here. All right. So chapter 1, the first panel is pretty high impact. I'm trying to go back here because I skipped ahead too far. It is a woman's face. Oh, see, I can't. Controlling this while y'all are watching is hard. It is a woman's face, gritting her teeth, and she's saying, "Am I shitting? It feels like I'm shitting." And above her head is written, "This is how an idea becomes real." And as soon as I see this, for a moment, I'm like, what in the fuck? And then I'm like, oh, she's giving birth right now, because I hear that's a thing. And her husband, as it turns out, they've been married in one fashion or another, because they have rings, is assisting with this birth, and they're obviously somewhere where birthing is not supposed to happen. And he is talking her through this, while there is what I can only describe as an overall narrator talking. And the dialogue is in the bubbles as usual, and the narration is written in this really interesting way where it's not in its own box. It's not even in high impact font. And it is easy to miss if you're not paying attention. And I'm wondering if I double click this, will it do the thing? Yep, it does. Cool. Because while I read on my phone, and you can use Kindle to read this comic, but my Kindle is in black and white, and I just didn't want to miss out on the colors in this. So I used my phone, which I don't normally do. If you double tap, it will bring up one panel at a time, and it makes it a lot easier to follow. So you're not trying to zero in on one section. And it says this is the previous one about her, like starting to give birth. And you see, guys, how it like zeroes in on this is how an idea becomes real. And then the next, panel, but ideas are fragile things. You guys can see how this works with the way that the panel like shows. It will show part of it depending on how large of a panel it is. So it will zero in on what it thinks you should be paying attention to first. And honestly, I know some people might find that really like irritating because they want to look where they want to look. But for me, somebody who is not that big of a comic reader, I do tend to get a little overwhelmed by the formatting, and it helps a lot for it to break even one panel up into different parts. So most don't live long outside the ether from which they were pulled, kicking and screaming. And then we go to her, glaring at her husband, who tries to tell her that she's beautiful. That's why people create with someone else. The two minds can sometimes improve the odds of an idea's survival. This is so like, I wish if you aren't actually watching this with me, I'm sorry, because this is going to be difficult. And then ends that sentence, the narration sentence ends with, but there are no guarantees. And you see the husband and he's got tears in his eyes. And this really implies that something has gone terribly wrong. But then the next shot is of him holding the baby and saying, it's a girl. And she is really crazy looking. She has a giant head that's about the size of the entire rest of her body. She has tiny little nubbin horns that are sticking out and is covered in blood and the umbilical cord. They have really like made sure that this looks as nasty as childbirth actually looks. So this is the introduction. This is the very, very first scene. And I can't fault them for starting it off this way because it sure fucking gets your attention. So I'm going to go back to the like wider page view if I can, if Kindle will let me do that. Come on, Kindle. What are you doing, buddy? I'm like, maybe they won't. Or maybe it has because it's a full page already. Yeah, it has. So this couple, let's talk about this couple. I'm going to do a double screen here. Does this work? Okay, cool. I'll switch back if I'm trying to like show you some real detail. This couple is hot as balls, and I have a crush on both of them. How's that? What the hell, illustrator? These people are fine. And there's a part where somebody's like, I can't believe she laid down voluntarily with that creature. And I'm like, you can't? Because he looks like an underwear model, except he's got horns. Oh no, horns. Like, give me a break. But yeah, this whole like introductory moment of the two of them is pretty moving. It just shows like the level of trust that there is between them. It shows how like willing to help and great under stress he is, because he is not panicked at all here. He is just like, nope, come on, we're doing this. And he also mentions how he can do some healing magic on her so that she doesn't feel pain the way that she normally would. So yeah, that's an interesting detail right off the bat. So they're sitting there trying to enjoy this moment